Hello, welcome to Talent Acquisition Trends and Strategy. I'm your host, James Mackey. I'm really excited for today's episode. We're going to be discussing a lot of really interesting stuff, including the current economic climate and how that's affecting hiring and just the general economy as a whole, which we really need to have some clarity on. And we can share with you what we're seeing out there in the market, particularly in tech. From there, we're going to be going through Chat GPT, seeing what we're seeing out there in the market related to applications within talent acquisition and how that's going to be impacting the world as a whole moving forward. We're going to be talking about some other interesting things too, like potential ban on TikTok in the U.S. market, and we might start to riff on some completely unrelated topics to that. So we'll see where the conversation goes today. But anyways, let me go ahead and introduce our panel. First off, we have Bridget Tesler. Bridget's our VP of Recruiting Services here at Secure Vision. Bridget, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. We are so happy for you to be here as well. Andreea Florescu is our VP of Operations here at Secure Vision. Andreea, great to have you here as well.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited for this conversation.
Yes. And lastly, we have Julia Arpag. Julia is our talent team lead here at Secure Vision. And again, Julia, thanks for joining us today. We're excited to talk with you.
Hi, thanks so much.
Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's talk about the economy and what's going on. Who wants to take the lead on the economy?
I would like to take the lead on the economy.
All right, you get to tackle this topic, which is like probably the hardest one.
No, I got this, guys. I was an English major, so I'm well equipped to discuss the economy with you here today. So I think what's interesting about what's going on right now, like obviously there's this hot debate, like is a recession coming? Are we currently in a recession? What is going on? Because on the one hand, like inflation, I mean, like there's all these different elements. So I did some research because I wanted to actually like know the data behind what's happening and not just have like emotion and anecdote and all that kind of thing, all those kind of things kind of fueling my understanding. So I found a lot of interesting data that looks like we are actually not trending towards a recession. And that's because we are currently still in, I know it doesn't feel like it, but we're still in a job market where there are more open roles than there are people looking. And that's typically a huge indicator of whether or not a recession is happening and or coming. So from my perspective, like I get that it feels really scary right now, but again, statistically, it looks like we are going to be able to avoid a recession. It looks like that's not the state we're in right now.
You said you were listening to an NPR podcast, is that right? And apparently they said, right, there was like 1.7 job openings for every person laid off. Is that what they said?
Yes, exactly.
But so then you followed up with them, right? Like you asked them like, yeah, but where'd you get that data? And then they didn't say anything.
Oh, no, I didn't ask them.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that'd be amazing if I just was like emailing NPR.
Yeah, just like, hey.
I did not email NPR, although if anyone here has a contact, I would love to take it. No, so what happened was, so I posted that on my personal LinkedIn because I was like, guys, announcement, like it's okay. I know it feels scary, but it's okay. And I got some comments, which were super helpful, where people were like, oh, well, there's a mismatch. Like the 1.7 job openings are not a perfect fit for the one person who got laid off or the role they want or the sector they want to work in, et cetera. And that's the data that I can't find. Like I can't find the information about exactly what are the job openings? What are the industries? Is there a mismatch? Like, obviously you can find stuff that says, hospitality is booming and medicine is booming. Like you can see the industries that are growing, but I haven't been able to find the exact numbers of who's looking, what are their titles, what are their industries, and who's hiring, what are the titles, what are the industries.
Well, right. I mean, that's why I think what the pushback you're going to get is that a lot of the people that are following you on LinkedIn and that we engage with are in the tech industry. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I think like healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, those industries are still seeing significant gains. And then you look within tech and it very much so feels like a recession. So there's been, several 100,000 tech workers laid off in the past year. It's in my world, as far as I'm concerned, we're in a recession. Like, I could look at the greater economy as a whole and, sure, we see that growth while it's slowing. I mean, I think when we look at the greater economy, I think unemployment is now up around 3.6%, and it's forecasted to go up to around 5.1% by the end of the year, which is an average of 4.7 for 2023.
Mhm.
So I mean, it is moving up, and so it's kind of like that softening. I think Bridget, before we jumped on, you're just saying like it's kind of cooling down a little bit. It's still
Right.
like I guess overall pretty good, but it does the economy does seem to be cooling from a macro perspective too.
Absolutely. So I just did a quick search. There was a statistic from November of 2021 saying that there were about 1.7 job openings per unemployed worker. So
Mhm.
that might have been a number that they were quoting on that NPR podcast.
From 2021.
Yeah,
NPR is too good for that. They wouldn't be
I would
putting
hope
I
so.
don't know.
to go.
I don't know.
Girl. All right. Let's tell you
No,
what.
no, but you're right. There are still more open roles than candidates, and that's like every data source that I've seen is points to that. But like I think within tech, like we're definitely having a very different experience right now.
Mhm.
And
Well, I think what bears like mentioning is that you can have a tech job, but not in the tech industry. Like, I know it's not sexy to work for the IRS, but they're opening 30,000 jobs. Like,
no,
Yeah.
I will not. I'd rather be unemployed.
yeah, James, please don't leave Secure Vision. Like, I don't want you to go work for the IRS. But
I will not.
I'm just saying, if you want to be a software engineer, you can do it for a company that's not explicitly a tech company. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do get what you're
Okay,
saying.
that's
I do
my whole
technically.
point.
Right. Right. This is
Yeah.
what we get spoiled in tech though, because we get to work for cool companies doing new stuff and nobody wants to go like work for the IRS, right?
I
Like,
hear you. No, I hear you. Like I said, it's not sexy at all. No one will say, "Oh my gosh, you work for the IRS. Can you refer me?" Like, probably not.
what
But
do you think their like employee promoter score is? Like they don't even do surveys.
no, they're
When-
just like, "You're welcome that you have a job. I stay here, don't stay here, whatever. Doesn't matter."
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but returning a bit, I think that's why you look at the overall market, and that's why the overall market at the end of the day really impacts the real recession, right? Of course, a certain sector or certain sectors can influence and drive that outcome, but at the end of the day, we're looking at the overall data right now. And on the overall data is what the Fed is also basing their decisions. So they're going to look at that. They're going to look at the unemployment rate. They're going to look at the job market and what's going to happen. And based on that, they're going to decide if they're going to raise interest rates again or cut into them if the recession is truly coming. Now, they are optimistic, at least in their last press releases and what they've been saying. They are optimistic. They're not seeing a recession right now. And that's where the contradiction is with the market. The market is seeing this softening on the job market, and they're kind of seeing the contradiction here. But at the end of the day, everything will be based upon the data that's going to come in the next few months. So I think psychology plays an impact here as well. So based on that, we're going to see what's going to happen. But there are optimistic people out there as well, and optimistic data at the end of the day. So we should look at that as well, I think, and not just have the loom and gloom perspective, which is important. I agree. We need to be realistic and not go against the current, as you said, James. And it's a very good point.
You got to respect the current.
Agreed. But at the end of the day, too much constriction as well, when it's not really the case, maybe can impact and can have like a ripple effect that also leads to.
It's like the same thing as the bank run, like with SVB.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
that, like it's when everybody starts to act a certain way,
Mhm.
that's where the impact comes from. But at the same time, it's like you're almost forced to act in that way to protect yourself, because you being the detractor, is that the word? The detractor from the situation, it doesn't do anything for you. You're just going to get screwed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
And it's how you toe that line. Very much
yeah, how do you
agreed.
tell your line? Yeah, it's and that's been really hard for me, honestly, because you
Well,
want to be
I
as
just think
aggressive
it's
as
a matter
possible.
of like dealing in reality. Like, this is the situation. Because obviously, Secure Vision, we do, to your point, James, like for you, it feels like you're in a recession because you recruit in tech. Like, what we do is tech recruitment. So it is a unique feeling for us for sure. So it's like dealing in the reality of that situation, but from an optimistic perspective, where we don't, like you said, Andrea, we're not filled with doom and gloom. We're like, yeah, this layoffs are definitely happening across tech, 100%. You can't deny that. But another piece is, I mean, tech hired like crazy ever since COVID. Like, it's been insane. So it's almost like, I know, James, you use language like market correction. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense to kind of look at this as maybe being that.
Yeah, it's it's weird though. Like it's really it's tough in tech right now. Like it is really tough. And I speak with a lot of tech CEOs and executives that are not in a good place psychologically, quite honest. Like it's you would think that, well, I think some people would think that like, people in that executive position or that founder CEO role like have a ton of confidence and they're, no matter what happens, they're going to be very optimistic about the future. But the reality is that a lot of folks that I've been speaking to are quite nervous and
Mhm.
they're not really feeling very good about what's going on. And they're worried about like, payroll and how they're going to, make it through this. And it's just interesting to see like there is like part of the some CEOs that are I suppose like pretty optimistic, but there's a lot of people right now that are pretty concerned. So again, like when you're in tech, it's almost like, okay, the greater economy is a greater economy, but like what's happening within our industry? And
Mhm.
you have to operate as if you were in a recession currently in order to get through it. And we're still seeing layoffs, companies. It's interesting too. It's like we're seeing more companies like lay off outbound sales teams and start to focus on things like referrals, upsells, community like growth, just different partnership channels, things that are a little bit more cost effective. A lot of these companies that built like large outbound sales organizations did that through funding, even though the unit economics were all screwed up, where basically it costed a ton for them to acquire the customers in relation to the lifetime value or the amount of money they're going to collect from that customer. They were still doing that because it was like basically growth at any cost to maximize the ARR, which is going to maximize the valuation. And the reality is like now that funding is dried up, they're looking at channels that are less effective and that don't really sustain. And a lot of that is large outbound sales organizations. So we're seeing a lot of those orgs get cut, which is, even like you look at like big tech within like Salesforce, stuff like that, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, like that's still part of what's driving is like this, shift to sustainability, path to profitability, lack of funding. That's really where we're at. I think that what's really, what's still cool about tech is like we're going to rebound faster than the greater economy. So like even if the greater economy starts to cool down, we're going to rebound faster. Like there's still so much room for innovation and growth. Like tech isn't going to be growing slowly for, like indefinitely. It's going to be, I still think we're going to see an uptick by end of year. Definitely. I would have hoped that it would have been going into the second half of the year, but I have a feeling like, potentially Q2, Q3 could be slow, but I still think that we're going to start to bounce back faster than I think some anticipate, which like some financial experts are saying like, 12 to 24 months post Silicon Valley Bank collapsing.
Mhm.
But that seems pretty damn conservative, which their job is to be conservative because they want to make sure that the companies they advise don't run out of cash. But
Mhm.
I think the
Yeah.
reality is that we're going to see it before then.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, and they
reality is we do have clients that banked with Silicon Valley Bank, and what happened there is influencing their hiring decisions on whether or not they're going to hire or on which roles they're going to hire. So they may cut some out and still hire for some of their opportunities, but they're very intentional about everything that they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what's so annoying about like the timing. I mean, there's never a good time for SVB to crash. Like to be clear, anytime that would have been really bad. But like it was just so frustrating because in January. So for everybody tuning in, we do embedded recruiting. So it's like hiring, helping companies hire in the tech industry. So we're directly tied to the hip with the health of the tech industry, which has been super fun for the past 6 months to a year. But anyways, we saw a huge uptick in business closed in January. We actually closed more business this past January than we did in 2022. It
Mhm.
was insane. It's just like, wow, in the middle of all this stuff, it's like we're closing all this new business. And then in February, we had a better February this year than we had February last year. And so we're like, oh, wow, March is historically a great month. We're going to close potentially all of this revenue and really things are going to be back on track and we're going to start growing again. And everything the indicators were that, okay, we're starting to heal. The tech industry is starting to heal. Companies are getting a little bit more aggressive when it comes to hiring. And all of it was looking fairly optimistic. Like I was cautiously optimistic. And I told everybody that. And it was the first time I felt somewhat optimistic in several months. And then Silicon Valley Bank crashed.
Mhm.
And then it was just like all of our pipeline was like, well, give us a few weeks. We'll see how it goes. So it just kind of, it definitely pushed back. Like everybody is feeling more conservative. We're starting to really feel people are really tightening their budgets again and not really moving forward. Like we had a few larger growth stage companies that were ready to thinking about hiring, and now they're pushing off for a quarter or two. And I think we even had a very well-known category leading SaaS company reach out to us that wants to talk about recruiting for 2024.
Man, they are planners.
I mean, what else are their talent acquisition leaders supposed to do? They're on a hiring freeze. They're probably like, they're just like,
that's
they're
fair.
like, what the hell else am I going to do?
Scheduling it.
Right.
Like, at this point, who knows what's going to happen in 2024?
I got to put some shit on my calendar for my team to see, like,
Looks like we're making progress in some direction.
Right. Like, I don't want to get cut. Let me just have these, year out conversations.
So James, I'm curious because you've obviously run Secure Vision for like almost 8 years now. So I feel like the tech industry is always volatile. Do you feel like this is a uniquely volatile past like 18 to 24 months?
What's weird about it is that it's lasting so long. Like we had I think it was like what 2017 or 18 where there was a bit of a dip, and I don't know, it was somewhere around then, but it was like a quarter, like it was nothing. And then even COVID was terrible, but it was like short-lived, right? To some extent, when it was just like
there was a fast market rebound, I feel like, in a lot of, especially
particularly for tech, right? Because it's just like free flowing money and all the investment. So
yeah,
this is weird in that it's like it's just taking so much time. And seeing the disconnect between tech and the greater economy is also pretty weird.
Yeah, and then you're right. The SVB thing was definitely like a kick while we were already down. So I hear that.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about that was, well, silver lining, I should say, was just that I felt like we hit bottom. Like, well, here it is. Like
we as like the greater tech industry, we as
like this is is it really going to get worse than this? And my thoughts are probably not. I guess it could always get worse, but I feel like this is hopefully we've kind of hit bottom as an industry. I mean, there's going to be like more layoffs, but I think we've gotten through most of them at this point, would be my perspective. And we are starting to see more companies like still enter our pipeline. We're probably going to close a few new customers in April, maybe 3. So
yes, let's go.
We're seeing some movement. It's not like everything's dead. It's just that we're getting more of these calls again where it's like, hey, we want to have an exploratory conversation so we can leverage you in the second half of the year for 2024. Because what else are the talent acquisition leaders supposed to be doing right now? Like they're trying to find, they're just doing planning. They're working with leaders on budget. They're like, there's just not a ton of stuff for them to do at the moment. It seems like.
Yeah, and
thing I would point out is that we hired and placed more people in Q1 of 2023 than we did in Q1 of 2022, even with the market the way it is.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Surprising.
So so even though we closed even though we closed like a ton of revenue in January, we still had a bunch of churn kick in from like Q4. So companies that gave notice in Q4, like that financial loss kicked in January. So even though we closed more revenue, we actually ended up taking a small loss in January, which was nuts, right? It was just very depressing. But like, just like, really, are you kidding me? We had our best quarter, or best month, and it's still, but it was to be expected. It really didn't come as a surprise. It was just like, man, this is ridiculous. And then Bridget, you shared that stat where we actually kicked across more hires. So it was just like, think about how weird that is, right?
It's bizarre.
We closed more revenue in this January than we ever had before. We had more churn kick in than we ever had before. And we also made more placements than we ever had before in the month of January. Yeah. And then I'm looking at this data with our finance lead and Bridget, like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, what, like, it's just ridiculous. It's just nothing is normal. Everything is totally like screwed up. Metrics are totally weird. Everything is just, it's making it so hard to do strategic planning. And then it just gets back to like cutting most things, getting back to efficiency, really dialing in on 1 or 2 revenue channels that are working. I mean, that's what it comes down to, but it's been so weird. Not good weird.
The bad kind. The confusing kind.
The worst.
Yeah.
Can we talk about TikTok?
We should talk about TikTok. So I'm intrigued about the TikTok thing, kind of more from the perspective of like, again, how it would impact the economy, specifically within recruitment, if it does officially get banned in the US. I don't think that's going to happen. I know that's been a conversation these last couple weeks. I'd be surprised if it did happen. Thoughts?
I don't think it's going to impact the economy. I think that there would probably just be like a
Another
competitive-
tech layoff, though. All the US based TikTok employees.
How many are there?
Oh, shoot, James. All right. That's a Google
Let's
away.
look at
You think about that, and then you think about all the creators that generate revenue via TikTok for their households. That is a huge income stream.
Holy shit. So on LinkedIn, it says they have,
7,000 employees.
okay, they have 40,000 globally.
Yeah, 7,000 in the US alone. That's a huge, that's another huge tech layoff. That just adds to what we're talking about, the doom and gloom, the blah, blah, blah. So I think it would be very impactful.
Yeah.
I guess.
No?
No,
Oh,
I agree with that. I just don't.
how
I
do
don't
I
like
get you
this.
to hear about
I-
this, James?
I don't like this reality.
I
I'm just
do-
letting this sink in.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk
I'm
about
connected
it.
with 19 people at TikTok
You are?
somehow.
Hit him up. Be like, what can you tell me about what's going on at TikTok?
Partnerships, all sorts of stuff. Just want to talk about like the application to recruiting that
Yeah.
TikTok is having, but I guess before that, I mean, does anybody have thoughts on like data privacy stuff that we're seeing primarily driven by the EU, which makes sense because they always like, for whatever reason, like I get the importance, but it's always at the very top of their value. Like the priority list for the EU is just privacy, like above all else, right? Like, what are your thoughts on TikTok and data privacy?
So I agree with Julia. I don't really think that that's going to happen, that the states will ban TikTok just because it has like a huge commercial use for a lot of people in the United States as well. So not only recruiters, but a lot of companies are reaching their target audience, specifically Gen Z, as Bridget pointed out earlier as well. They're reaching them on TikTok. If a ban would be imposed, that would definitely mean that those content creators need to go on other platforms and kind of chase down the Gen Zers and see that they go to Instagram, that they go to Snapchat or whatever other platform. On the data privacy aspect, specifically kind of as a European, in Europe, we do have GDPR, we do have much more strict constraints when it comes to the protection of data. I'm not really sure. I need to do some research and see. I don't think any countries in the EU have banned TikTok, to be honest. So for now, they're kind of going with it. I do know they have some thoughts about ChatGPT, and we can talk about this in a later episode. Some thoughts on ChatGPT based on the same criteria, data integrity and kind of data privacy. So TikTok might be impacted at some point due to this, just because of the precedent set by ChatGPT as well. So that's something to consider. But
That's interesting because it's like Europe kind of leads the charge on data privacy.
Mhm.
And yet they seem to be, they're not really pushing for a ban on TikTok, but then you see like the US government, which I think it's more of US government, I don't think is doing it for data privacy as much as it is national security, which is just through a different lens of, we see it as a national security threat versus just looking at it from collecting consumer data, if you will.
Yes, and just as a correction, because I did do some research right now, so the EU and the European Union in general have imposed bans, but on TikTok staff device. So their staff working in government cannot have TikTok on their work phones, for example.
Right.
I'm not sure if this applies for personal phones as well, personal devices as well, actually. I just found it now. So yeah, that's the level of the ban, at least in Europe right now. They haven't banned TikTok altogether as an app for the consumers as well. However, they are protecting their data when it comes to more institutional aspects. And I think that the US was considering this as well and may have applied it. I'm not sure, in some authorities.
I believe so.
Yeah, it looks like we don't allow our government employees, same as what you said about Italy, but it looks like they only can't have it on their government paid like work phones. It doesn't say anything in this article I'm reading from CBS right now about whether it's allowed on their personal phones. Yeah. But to your point, James, it looks like it is like more of a political issue for us than privacy. Like this article, what we can link in the show notes, specifically talks about the issue for the US, like the people that have brought this ban before Congress. They're like, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Like they have explicitly said that is our concern with this as far as being used in the US. So it is so political for us, I think. But then the trickle down is obviously very substantial in every way, politically, economically, et cetera. And to your point, Bridget, there are so many, like the point of this article is basically they're like, you're not punishing China, you're punishing the content creators. Like you're punishing the people who've built their businesses on TikTok.
Well, that's why you need to have multiple channels.
James is like, I'll do some coaching if anyone needs some marketing coaching.
We'll get some YouTube.
Well, you shouldn't
we'll
have
get
like all of
Instagram.
your followers on one channel, because then it, like, even if it's not even just that, but then like if the algorithm changes, right, and how the content is distributed,
Mhm.
like you're kind of screwed, right? Like if Instagram, you know, isn't pushing organic quite as much, or like LinkedIn stops pushing organic quite as much because they want to drive more ad revenue, and all of your, you know, all of your following base is tied to that. Like I think, and I don't think it's unless you have an insane amount of resources, it's necessarily realistic to have a ton of channels that work. But I think, you know, for us, it's like we invest in LinkedIn and we invest in podcast. A lot of people invest in Twitter, like as a second channel. So I think it's just like, it's always risky to build like solo on one channel because
True.
of stuff like this too.
Yeah.
But I think one of the issues is that, at least so far, Instagram, Facebook, all these other social media companies haven't been as successful in creating this shorts format and really getting people to actually transition there from TikTok. So that's one aspect. They're not really competing when it comes to that with TikTok. Still, people are flocking to TikTok when it comes to shorts, especially again, Gen Zers, millennials as well. So that's an aspect too. Yes, they will diversify for sure, and they should. But if your audience, a lot of your audience is on TikTok, you're a bit tied to the hip there. You can work on that, diversifying for sure, but that's a component of it.
Well, yeah, and also like until it is banned, I do think it does make sense to invest in it as a channel for recruitment, particularly for larger companies that are hiring at scale within Gen Z.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go where people are, and
branding,
yeah, employer branding, awareness. I mean, that's I think just you have to go where the market is that you're trying to appeal to.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely not all your eggs in one basket, right? Like you have to be at least on a couple platforms. You have to know which platforms are going to be most effective, and where the people are that you want to reach, right?
Yeah.
Well, cool. Look, I think this is a good end to part one of our segment. For everybody tuning in, we're going to be publishing a part two in a few days. So make sure to tune into that. We're going to be discussing Chat GPT and how it's going to be leveraged for in-house recruiters, talent acquisition departments. And we're going to do some pretty cool stuff, like ask Chat GPT directly how it's going to change recruiting, and we're going to share the answers, and then as a team, we're going to riff on whether or not we think that that's going to actually come to life, or we feel like some of it might be a little bit of bullshit. So we're just going to do our best to kind of distinguish between the two and have some fun with that. So we'll see you next time.